One can look at either Miro or even de Chirico, who was making similar barren landscapes full of disparate imagery back in 1913. It is important to note that surrealism at this point was a very social movement. Many times they would meet in cafes together and create large collaborative drawings. As a rule, surrealists would state that the art was a byproduct of a philosophy. So the idea that someone stole an idea from someone else didn't really exist. It is also no mistake that while Freud was writing The Ego and the Id in 1923, in which he developed it as an alternative to the conscious, unconscious, and pre-conscious, the ideas of Freud and the surrealist leader André Breton are at the heart of surrealism. In many ways, this is the closest relationship that art and science have occupied since the Renaissance. This collaborative nature led Dali to investigate film, and in 1929 he worked with Louis Benel to create Un Chien Andalou. Dali was continually pushing the boundaries of conventional morality, and this caused his family to further distance themselves from him. He was becoming increasingly provocative, and it was in 1931 that he created his most famous work, The Persistence of Memory. In this painting, we see barren landscape inhabited by various soft clocks which are draping themselves on various objects. In the bottom right, we see what appears to be some sort of nebulous sleeping mass. It is apparent that it is that of a human, but we can't quite make out the correct form. Dali is trying to convey the fogginess of the dream state here, and the clocks can symbolize a few things. It could be that while dreaming, our sense of time becomes muddy, or it could also be the reference to another great thinker of that time, which was Albert Einstein and his theory of relativity. Nonetheless, this painting has become iconic and strikes a chord with millions of people to this day. The thing that really shocked me when I first saw it is its size. It's a really little painting, measuring only 24 centimeters by 33 centimeters, or about 10 inches by 13 inches, which in my opinion makes the brushwork all the more amazing. Overall, the works from this period of time reflected what Dali said was his Freudian period. The next work we will be looking at is The Metamorphosis of Narcissus. Dali completed this work after returning from a successful stay in the U.S. It was created using what Dali called the Paranoic-critical method. This basically meant putting two similarly shaped objects near each other and suggesting that one form is something else. So in this case, we see Narcissus, who is gazing into his reflective pool, and on the right we see a finger with an egg on it. The idea was to have completely disparate elements and make them work together. It also plays with ideas of perception and how we create our own symbolism in our minds. The overall idea is to create links between things which rationally are not linked. Nonetheless, Dali's symbolism still seeps into everywhere. If we further investigate what we believe to be random, we discover that all of the random stuff that happens to us makes up all of our own personalities. In the next few years, civil war broke out in Spain, which preceded World War II. Dali got out of Europe as fast as he could and refused to take sides in the battle. This caused a lot to label him as a wimp, most notably George Orwell, who was beginning to despise the cult of personality surrounding Dali, and the way that Dali seemed to have a mutually parasitic relation with the media. But the underlying question was whether or not Dali was playing a joke on everyone. In his former years, he called himself a monarchist-anarchist, and after the war finished, he started a very strange, close relationship with the authoritarian Franco regime, even painting Franco's daughter. He converted to Catholicism and did another super realistic bread painting, this time the bread representing the Eucharist. He made statements about how the state should wipe out the anarchists, yet he still loved and spoke about the work of Federico Garcia Lorca, who was a friend of Dali's, who was most likely killed by nationalists, and his work had become banned in Spain at the time. In 1933, Dali returns to repaint his most famous work, The Persistence of Memory. As I stated previously, one could assume that the original painting could be linked to Einstein's ideas of space-time. In that sense, this work is a continuation of that theme. Except now what we know about physics has changed, and this painting has a lot more to do with quantum mechanics, in that the idea of everything can be endlessly broken down into smaller components. During the 50s and 60s, Dali creates many Christian-based paintings. He also begins to work closely with celebrities in the mainstream. He made the dream sequence for Alfred Hitchcock's film Spellbound. He also worked with fashion designers, furniture designers, and even produced a cartoon with Walt Disney called Destino. It would be this close relationship with the giants of media which many would begin to see as off-putting. In 1967, Dali creates what many regard as his final masterpiece, tuna fishing. In this painting, we see the entrails of tuna being ripped open and scattered about the painting. They morph themselves into other imagery, a la Dali's Paranoic-critical method. The one part of the painting I found to be atypical of Dali's work is the black figure at the center bottom of the painting. It appears to look like a silkscreen, and it is more reminiscent of another man who knew how to work the media at the same time, Andy Warhol. In keeping with Dali's aloof nature when commenting on his paintings, he claimed that the work was inspired by Jean-Louis Ernest Meissonier. He also started working commercially and created the Chupa Chups logo, among other things. In 1977, Dali completes, this is the title coming, Dali's hand drawing back the golden fleece in the form of a cloud to show Gala completely nude, very far away behind the sun. In this painting, Dali actually created a stereoscopic image, which means that if looked at correctly, or with the aid of a special mirrored viewer, they fuse into a single 3D image. In 1980, his wife started going mad and began feeding him cocktails of drugs mixed into his drinks. It is believed that she was senile and was not doing anything out of malice. However, the drugs took a toll on Dali's body, and his hand shook so badly that he could no longer paint. The last years of his life proved to be chaotic, and after his wife's death in 1982, he pretty much lost it completely. He moved into a castle and threw himself out of a window. He also refused to drink water and intentionally dehydrated his body. Whether these were suicide attempts is unknown. However, it would be difficult to fully understand anymore what is show, what is simply Dali, and what is simply reality. In 1983, he would create his last painting, The Swallow's Tail. At this point, Dali was brought back to Figueres by a group of concerned friends and artists, and they made sure he was taken care of until his dying day. Then, on January 23, 1989, Dali's heart stopped beating while he was listening to one of his favorite operas, Tristan and Isolde. He was 84 years old. Because of his immense popularity, Dali may still be a hard sell to many of the world's art historians, but there's no mistake that his paintings are still alive today. He's an artist whose career was mirrored by the explosion of media in the 20th century, and it seems that there was no medium that Dali didn't investigate. From film to fashion to performance art and television commercials, Dali was a man that used every outlet to his advantage. Whether it was all a big show, we'll never know.